Welcome to the starting lineup with Andrew Wiebe. I'm Jason Saghini. We're going to get right into the questions from fans because I love this one. Doug Brown asks, who do I have to pay to be competitive at this thing?
Well, you don't got to pay us. We do it all for free, of course. But you might want to check out that new news tab in the fantasy homepage there. That's going to give you all the information from Jason and I, as well as Ben Jada. We do the research. You reap the rewards.
All right, and I'll also say this, if you have some catching up to do, keep in mind that in Week 11, there are a lot of teams playing 2 games. If you can set your team up so that you have all 11 guys playing double games, you have a chance to maybe make up some ground on other players. We're going to move now into this week's transfer matchup. After Daniel Palladini stood out for the Chicago Fire last weekend, we are now looking for the guy who's coming from off the radar who could make an impact for your team this week. So looking at 2 guys who are not that expensive, playing the same position, who could help your team. My pick, Nick LaBroca of the Colorado Rapids. For me, he kind of came out of his shell a little bit last week, scoring points in the offensive bonus category and the defensive bonus category. Keep in mind, he's going back to play the team who he really broke out with a couple years ago and then was discarded from Chivas USA.
Well, I'll stick with the same game, different team. I'm going to go with Chivas USA's Carlos Alvarez. It seems he has earned that starting spot in Chalice's starting lineup. And remember, Chivas USA, although not flashy, they have 10 goals in 5 games. They are the top scoring team in MLS. He is going to be a guy pulling the strings for them.
All right, plenty more people need a lot more advice, and here's where it starts. Sporting Kansas City is on a bye this week. A lot of people own Sporting Kansas City players, including Graham Zusi, who is the most owned player out of the entire league. So, Andrew, the question is, what are you doing with your Kansas City players?
Well, look, I have 3. I have Nielsen, Kalin, and Zusi, and I am not dropping any of them. You cannot afford with a player like Zusi, for instance, to get that half on the transfer side and then have to pay it back. Keep him, make sure your bench is steady. That's the key here. Make sure you have a team that can absorb these losses and pick up when these guys go down.
Look, if you need any other reason to keep your Sporting Kansas City players, here they are. They play 2 games next week. They're tough games at New York and at LA, but then they have Portland at home, Chivas at home, and then another double week with Seattle and Houston. You have to keep your Sporting Kansas City players. Now's not the time to get rid of them. So what do? You make sure your bench counts. We're here to give you some cheap guys who you should have on the bench who get the start this week.
Yeah, we're going to start in the goalkeepers. Of course, we've talked about him many times over the past few weeks. Clint Irwin, a huge week last week. He's a guy to stick with. And Joe Bendick looks like he's taken that starting spot, for now at least, from Stefan Fry. 2 to look at.
All right, you mentioned Chivas a little bit earlier. They're a source of good, cheap players, and Bobby Burling is one of those players who could make an impact for them this week. He is only $4.4 million, so you can afford him. And another player for the Columbus Crew, Tyson Wall, also $4.5 million. And this is a guy who takes a lot of set pieces, gets a lot of crosses. He can help your team.
Yeah, Carl, we met another one to look at with these guys. 3.9, wait a few days on him. He's going to be one you want to look at on Friday, whether or not Alessandro Nesta will start or not.
All right, and then moving to the forwards, we have Mike Cohen-Santos as an option, $5.6 million. You saw what he did last week off the bench. Could he earn some more playing time? And then Diego Fagundes is a player that I like. New England Revolution coming off the bye. Jay Heap said he wants to get Fagundes involved in this team. He likes what he's been doing. 5.7, that's an affordable forward potentially on your bench.
Yeah, another couple guys to look at. Not exactly shoe-in starters, but Cam Weaver at 5.1. If Will Bruin can't go with that hamstring injury, he's the one that will get the start up top for Houston. And then Corey Herzog, a big week last week. He's only $5.7 million, but will Darren Maddox be back in the lineup? That's a chance, but it could pay dividends.
All right, we skipped over the midfielders because we told you LaBroca and Alvarez, 2 guys that we both like. Let's get to some more questions from fans, though. Brandon Boyer asking, when would be a good time to invest in Donovan, or will there be a good time to invest in Donovan?
Well, there will be a good time to invest in Landon Donovan. I personally do not think it's right now. At $9.8 million, there is only one midfielder that costs more, and that is Graham Zusi, and he's by far and away the best player in fantasy. Take a wait-and-see approach on him. You have to think he's going to get it going at some point, but you really don't want to waste $10 million waiting for the growing pains to go away.
Also, look at Donovan's schedule coming up. Some tough games ahead. I didn't think he looked that great in Champions League, so I'm really waiting for him to return. I'm holding off on that bye. A similar question coming in from Matt Keys, and he says, what do I do with Thierry Henry? Should I drop him at this point because of his inconsistent playing time?
Yeah, my first impression on this one was to say drop Thierry Henry, but the more you look at it, the more it seems like he is primed for a breakout. You talked about turf. He does not play on turf until May 11th, so he has a nice stretch of about a month to get his legs under him to score some goals, and he's had some success in these fixtures coming up.
When you look at the New York schedule from weeks 7 to 11, at DC, home against New England, at Toronto, at Columbus, Montreal, and then at New England in the final game. That's a double week. Thierry Henry has done very well in these games. 10 games over the course of his career in MLS, 11 goals, 4 assists. He produces in these games. I think it's going to start with the game at DC. Again, he's played 3 games there, 3 goals, 2 assists. I'm riding Henry for the next few weeks. Now it's time for the lightning round. We're going to fly through some questions to get them all in, and we start with Eric, and he wants to know, Letou or Jackson?
Jackson, that's easy. Eric also asking, Olave or George John?
John, questionable. I'd go with Olave. Another question from Twitter, is McInerney the best deal around at $8 million?
Well, he's on my team, and I think his trajectory is only going to go up. Moving back, Ian on Twitter, Jimmy Nielsen or Bill Hamid?
Nielsen on a bye, you got to go with Hamid. He also asked Higuain, Johnson, or Bieler?
Johnson this week, Higuain for potential, and Bieler for constant production. Finally, Milan on Twitter. He is struggling, needs some point catchers, needs a defender, midfield, and forward. Go.
If money's no option, Thierry Henry, I told you I like his schedule. Brad Davis, Mr. Consistent, and Mikel, a lot of upside from the defender position for FC Dallas. That's all we have for this week's starting lineup. Don't forget to tweet at MLS Fantasy with all your questions, and good luck this weekend.